This episode of Decoding TV is brought to you by McDonald's, proudly serving communities since 1965. McDonald's, I'm loving it. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Decoding TV. I'm David Chen.
And I'm Patrick Willems.
Today, it's a special episode that we are recording live and in person from the island of Oahu in Hawaii. Patrick, we are here to speak at the Hawaii International Film Festival. We've actually both, as of this recording, already done our speaking bits, and I think it's safe to say that we've had a lovely time here so far.
Beautiful place. You know what? Reminds me a lot of Niamos.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Indeed. But a huge thanks to the Hawaii International Film Festival for inviting us here. But while we're here, we couldn't turn down the opportunity to record our conversation and review and recap of Andor Episode 10 today.
One Way Out.
One Way Out is the name of the episode we're going to be discussing.
Dave and I are literally staying 3 floors apart in the same hotel on the day that a new Andor episode drops. So,
Kismet.
We, just so everyone knows, we normally live on opposite sides of the country.
Yes.
So this is a very special moment.
Agreed. So anyway, you can find more episodes of this podcast at podcast.decodingtv.com. Email us at decodingtv@gmail.com. And find us on Twitter, TikTok, and YouTube at decodingtv. All right, Patrick Willems. Let's talk about Season 1, Episode 10 of Andor, One Way Out.
Let's do it.
We'll begin by discussing overall thoughts. What do you think of this episode?
A banger.
Yes.
We were so hyped up, especially by the final scene and the final line of the previous episode, that we're just we know the prison break is coming.
Yeah.
And I thought the prison break was thrilling. I think, is this the shortest episode of the season?
It was pretty. I don't know about shortest. I think there's been some that have been 30, 35 minutes, I think.
Okay.
This one was 42 minutes, if I recall correctly, or something along those lines.
I think it's 42 with credits.
Yeah.
So I think it's, maybe. Anyway, it felt like a little bit shorter, but because the bulk of the episode is the prison break. We just kind of briefly touch in on the other storylines, not all the other storylines, because sadly, zero content in this episode.
Yes. So some of my overall thoughts on this episode is the concluding episode of a 3-episode arc, right, that began with episode 8, right? So it's 8, 9, and 10. And this episode promised to have a prison break. It did have a prison break. The prison break was excellent. It was really well done. My heart was in my throat. I was really stressed out the whole time I was watching it.
A big emotional episode for old Kino Loy.
Totally. And in addition to being stressed out, I've been reflecting on, Cassian Andor has probably had the most stressful 3 months of anyone's life in the galaxy at this point, you know? From the escape from Ferrix all the way to the Eldani heist, all the way to Narkina 5 prison break, right? This is just a set of trials that I don't even want to imagine what the final 2 episodes have in store for him.
And this pretty much all happened because he went to the wrong brothel on the wrong night trying to find his sister.
I was rewatching the first couple episodes of the show with my wife, who, because I love the show so much and I wanted to show her the show. And you realize how every person in the equation contributed to the events of, I guess, A New Hope. If Cyril Karn hadn't been so enthusiastic, none of this would have happened, probably. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, it does make you wonder. I mean, if Cassian Andor were not in Rogue One, if he had not joined the rebellion, would most of those events still have happened? Just with would they assign just some other guy to go track down Jyn Erso?
It's true. It's true. Maybe. But in any case, the episode was great. I would say the non-prison break stuff, I have some, qualms with. Specifically, the Mon Mothma stuff.
As in, that's one scene.
Yes, it's one. There's not that much non-prison break stuff.
Yeah.
But I have some qualms with that I will articulate to you. But Yes, the Prison Break, they had to deliver on a good Prison Break. They did. It's really well done. There's some really nice things about it that we'll talk about. The non-Prison Break stuff, I'm like, I have some issues with, but we'll talk about them. So overall, I thought great episode. Still really love the show.
Yeah.
So we will start by talking about the Prison Break stuff. Now, before we get going, I do just want to call out that in the past we have talked about the track Niamos that's on the soundtrack. Several people wrote in to say that, guess what? Nicholas Britell had another album drop or a soundtrack drop, score drop, I guess.
Yo, the new Britell is out.
The new Britell is out, right? And so I think episodes, I want to say 5 through 8 were released on the score for 5 through 8 were released. And there are multiple Niamos mixes. We now know there was Niamos like Morlana Club mix, and there's other Niamos mixes. I do think the Morlana Club mix is the best one.
Yeah.
But you can now, on your favorite streaming service, go and check out the other Niamos mixes.
It's what all the kids are listening to in the hottest clubs.
Yeah.
Niamos Club mix. It's and I mean, genuine question. I wonder if they're going to make like an official remix album, but and have like different like electronic music artists like remix specifically Niamos.
Yeah.
Because I mean, like for instance, they released a whole remix record for the Matrix Resurrections score of just like electronic like remixes of like the orchestral score for that movie. So I feel like, Britell's stuff in the Niamos track is like already halfway there.
Yeah,
so I'd love to hear it.
The other thing I wanted to point out about the music is I don't think we've really talked about this, but there is a opening theme that you hear when the Andor main title appears. And usually a lot of people will skip intro or you might fast forward past that, but the score for that does change throughout the course of the season.
It does.
Yeah.
Also, imagine being so impatient that you're like, I can't wait these 20 seconds.
Well, I'm just gonna say that it's a lot of logos. It's like a Lucasfilm logo, it's a Star Wars logo, and then it's an Andor logo. And
David, these 3 logos are not as long as one Marvel Studios logo. I'm sorry. I will never back down about the fact that the Marvel Studios logo is offensively long and indulgent.
Wow.
You look at how short and classy the Lucasfilm one is. No sound. It's like 5 seconds long.
Yeah.
It just appears.
It's really nice.
And the Marvel Studios one.
What do you think of the Star Wars logo? There's a Star Wars where you see
I think it's
R2D2 and C-3PO.
I think it's pointless. It's like, I know that Lucasfilm does include like Indiana Jones and Willow, for instance. But it just feels like, look, for the past 15 years, anytime the Lucasfilm logo appears, it means Star Wars. We don't need an extra Star Wars bumper to tell. I mean, what person is not aware they're watching a Star Wars show?
Okay, you just said, hey, I don't skip any of this stuff, and then you also articulated a very great case for skipping all of it, which is why I skip a lot of it. So
see, I will. Here's the thing. The only one that I mind is the little Star Wars thing, which is also, again, a fraction of the length of the Marvel Studios logo.
Fair.
And I think the actual Andor title reveal, it's for a title sequence, short and classy. You get some cool music.
Yeah.
I'll watch it every time.
I will say something. I actually don't mind the Marvel Studios logo, and one of the things I really like is when they play with the music. Like, there's a Marvel Studios opening theme now, but sometimes, the theme will play backwards, or something weird it'll be a different song. I kind of like when they play with it.
Here's the thing. It's like, I won't complain too much about it with the movies, but the fact that they play the entire like minute-long Marvel Studios logo in front of every episode of every TV show. When you watch literally any other TV show on any, excuse me, how long does like the HBO logo take? It's like
3 seconds, yeah.
Right. It's like the way TV has usually gone, it's like an episode of The Simpsons ends. And then at the very end of the credits, there is Gracie Films, and then 20th Century Fox, and that's at the end. It's just, I think it's obnoxious the way Marvel does it. And also, Marvel, they had the perfect logo with the original page flip that debuted with the first Spider-Man movie that I think Kyle Cooper designed. And that was so beautiful and classy.
That was really nice.
That this just feels like, I don't know, it's like the really excessive, ugly version of that. And I don't like it. Anyway, we're talking about Andor.
Back to Andor.
Actually, did we have any messages or feedback?
Well, I was gonna. I didn't even finish my point about the Andor opening theme, which is that it is slightly different. And I was reading Screen Crush, and they were saying like their supposition is basically like as the series has gone on, the music has gotten more full and like more like richer and full bodied. To indicate that the rebellion is growing, basically. So
that makes sense. And also, Cassian is like him going from like the lone guy out on his own into part of something larger.
Yeah.
And I bet at some point some good music video essayist is going to do a video breaking down the evolution of Andor's opening title sequence music. And I look forward to watching that inevitable video.
Indeed. All right. Hey, folks out there, if you're watching or listening to this, Patrick H. Willems, famed YouTube video essayist, he's thrown down the gauntlet.
Yeah, and I'm not going to make it because I don't make Star Wars videos anymore. And I also am not a person to analyze music.
And this technically doesn't qualify as a Star Wars video, for those who are curious.
You heard it here first, folks. David Chen said it.
At least on Patrick's channel. Okay. Let's talk about some of the stuff that happened in Andor Season 1, Episode 10. We're going to talk about the non-Narkina 5 stuff first, and then we're going to talk about the Narkina 5 stuff.
You want to jump right into Mon Mothma, your least favorite part of the episode?
Yeah, sure. So there's a scene with Mon Mothma, and she meets Davos Skalden, I believe, in this episode, right?
Terrific name.
Yes, great Star Wars name. And basically, she is trying to... She's meeting with Davos Skalden, who is basically the Jason Bateman from Ozark of the Star Wars universe.
David, explain this to me as someone who's never seen the show Ozark. And most of what I know about it comes from last night when you performed for a group of us the opening monologue of the first episode.
Jason Bateman is a skilled money launderer in the Netflix original series Ozark. So he launders cartel drug money, basically. So
yes, your comparison makes sense now.
Yeah. So Davos Skalden, a money launderer, is my sense, like the galactic equivalent of a money launderer. He can disguise the movements of Mon Mothma's money. There's a really like fun bit of dialogue they have where he's like, your money is yours. Like, you should be able to move it around however you want, and why should the Empire have a piece of it or know what's going on? But then Mon Mothma asks, like, what's your price? He declines to name one. And she's like, I'd really just prefer to like pay you. I don't want to owe anyone, least of all you. She has identified him as a thug, I believe, in the past.
Yes.
And he names his price, which is that he wants to introduce his son to Mon Mothma's daughter, Leda, because apparently it is Chandrilan custom that children get married to each other.
I mean, we've already established that that's how Mon and Perrin.
That's right.
They were married when they were teenagers.
Yeah. So why did I not love this storyline? I guess I feel like I feel like we don't quite know enough about Mon and her, what her attitude is towards Chandrilan customs, and I don't know. I
rewatched this this morning.
Yeah.
And I think I identified the problem here because back in, I believe, episode 7, I was saying on this very podcast, Mon Mothma is now like maybe the most interesting character on the show. I am riveted by the scenes of her having these secret conversations with Tay at dinner parties and having to like have put on like different faces depending on who she's talking to and all of that. Loved that stuff. I think the issue with the Mon Mothma storyline over this arc, the Bo Willimon written arc, is that I think her goals about what she wants to do with this banking and moving money around and getting money, it's very vague.
Yeah.
Like when we know that when we're watching the scene where we know her main goal is she has to secretly or very, very discreetly hide from everyone else there and hide from her own family that she is trying to lure someone into her side and reveal her actual political leanings. That is exciting and suspenseful.
Yeah.
But because the actual mechanics of what she is doing with money and where the money is going and what the money is for, it's very nebulous. And I think that's a little bit less exciting because I'm just a little bit, still not entirely, I know she wants money for rebellion stuff, but
there's no specific stakes attached to it.
Right. It's basically just she's having trouble opening a bank account.
Yes.
And the thing is, I actually kind of perked up at the idea of this guy basically pretty much putting a price on this of just I pretty much I want your daughter to marry my son. I know he does say I'm not asking for a betrothal, but basically
I just want an introduction,
right? But the idea of her having to contemplate kind of using her own daughter as a bargaining chip.
Yeah.
Suddenly it got more personal, and that got more interesting to me than where this has been for the last couple episodes.
Yeah, I think, Scalden also talks about we can't live a non-conform, or he talks about non-conformity. It's not really an option for us, right?
Mm-hmm.
We basically have to do a lot of stuff we don't want to do.
Right.
And that's obviously what Mon is struggling with this whole season. So I think thematically it works. Mon is needing to increasingly make compromises into what she's willing to do for the rebellion, and that's uncomfortable for her. But in terms of the specific stakes, okay, let me just give you an example. She and her daughter don't get along very well.
No.
Right? Why does she... why isn't she oh yeah, sure, you can have her, it's fine. That's a thing that character might say, but she doesn't, because I guess she's really upset by this basic idea of associating with this guy, right? And
yes,
and I felt I don't know. I guess I just felt I needed some more character details for this scene to really hit home.
I think some of it comes from the fact that because we don't spend a ton of time on the relationship with Mon and her daughter, other than we know that her daughter, in a very teenage way, seems kind of resentful of her and gets along better with her dad, who's kind of the fun, chill dad. Yeah. That's all we really know. And so because again, this is not the Mon Mothma show. This is, she is a supporting character on a big ensemble show.
Yeah.
And if the show had devoted more time, over the 10 episodes we've seen, to talking about, I guess, why Mon really resents and regrets having been forced into this marriage as a teenager, and why and maybe a bit more about her relationship with her daughter, and why, even though there's frustrations and stuff like that,
they still really care about each other deeply.
Exactly. And why she fundamentally does not want to force her daughter into the same tradition that she was when she was that age. And I know, you can interpret all this stuff, because
you can put it together, but
looking at her relationship with Perrin and all of that. But I think it's we're missing a little bit that would probably make this land harder.
Exactly.
That said, I'm still, because we do know where Mon's arc eventually goes. Yeah. And we do know. We don't know. But
do you think when Mon goes home from giving the many Bothans died to get this information speech, that she's going home to Perrin and Lita?
This is the thing. I'm assuming at some point her family exits the picture. Yeah. And so I'm very curious to see where this will go. And that's it. I hope she gets this bank account set up soon. And can move
so
over.
We can get off of bank account plotline.
Just doing some slightly other stuff, because that honestly, that like that one element of this storyline is maybe my only beef with the show in quite a while. Like for this episode, I have no, again, other than the lack of Cyril Karn, I have no other complaints. And to be fair, the content in the previous episode was so monumental.
It was such a gift to both us and humanity as a whole, I'd argue.
Yeah. I mean, it motivated me to make a whole fan cam video, which is not a thing that I have ever done before and maybe ever will again.
Yeah.
And so
let's talk about that after the break. But for now, yes, I think we've tried to point out some of our issues with the Mon Mothma storyline. It's not terrible. It's just like I wish we had a little more details there. You know, we do get hints. You know, like obviously things are tense between her and Perrin. Perrin wants the little worm thing inside his drink, and she doesn't. And it's like, okay, well, that's a sign that she doesn't like Chandrilla or all this stuff back.
That said. They need to add that worm drink at Galaxy's Edge.
Yes,
100%. Seriously. I will, like, if they add that at what is it, like Olga's Cantina or whatever, I will travel back there and spend all that money because I gotta have the worm drink.
Yeah, totally. Okay.
Can I also just say one more thing about the Mon Mothma scene?
Go ahead.
Once again, great fits, like across the board. Mm-hmm. Everyone's got awesome outfits. Yeah,
awesome.
And also, I just thought, I didn't know this for a fact. I think it's interesting that they do establish that this is like state housing, that she has provided this home as a senator.
Yeah,
and
interesting.
I didn't know that. I thought maybe they're just rich and they got a fancy apartment.
Yeah. All right, a couple of other scenes. There's one scene on Ferrix. Marva is not doing well. Like you see a doctor go into Marva's house.
And we learn that Marva is not taking her medicine.
Yes. Then we see Cinta seeing the doctor go into Marva's house. Then we see, I believe, an Imperial officer watching the whole thing take place as well.
This is... That Imperial, if that's an Imperial officer, he looks like he's dressed in more casual clothing.
Yes, I think, well, it's because Miro last episode or 2 episodes ago was like, hey, we have someone watching Marva. So I think that's who she's talking about.
Yeah.
So
this was just like, it's a very short scene.
Yes.
Same thing we have one scene with Dedra Miro.
Yeah.
And just kind of following up on... their plan, with this pilot they're gonna kill and all that.
So a character that we had not really, I didn't really pay much attention. Lonnie Jung is the name of the character.
Lonnie, this is a big episode for Lonnie.
Yeah, he's played by Robert Ems, and this is what's kind of one of the cool things about the show that I really like is they introduce like 100 people with speaking roles, and then all of a sudden one of them becomes super important out of nowhere. Like that's kind of cool. I prefer that to it reminds me of honestly The Sopranos. Mm-hmm. Have you seen Sopranos?
I've only seen a couple seasons of it.
Yeah.
I apologize, everyone. I will get back and finish it one day.
So The Sopranos, like what they would do is you'd be introduced to all these characters, and then season 4, episode 7 or whatever would just randomly focus on one of the characters, and you follow that character home, and you meet their wife and kid, and all of us, and then they become this major character in your mind. It's kind of cool. It makes the world feel really rich, and that's what happens with Lonnie Jung. Lonnie makes a suggestion about Anton Krieger. He's like, "Hey, maybe we should do this to further entrap Anton Krieger, or we should." I think he basically suggests that they don't change what their plan would be. They don't let things play out. Instead, the Empire should intervene as they normally would, or else they'll know something's up, right? And he kind of gets one over on Dedra Miro. Dedra Miro kind of looks a little weak in that situation.
And it's been interesting because Lonnie has been there basically since, I think, episode 4, when Dedra was introduced.
Yeah.
As just one of the guys in the room.
Yep.
He has a very distinctive look.
Yes.
He's got red hair. He's got the mustache.
He's kind of like a Kirkland signature version of Donald Gleason is kind of what I would describe.
Yeah, yeah.
Not in a bad way.
I would have called him. He's like the little rat boy.
Or that. Patrick, these are real actors playing these people.
You know what? I bet if he would have to describe his who is your character?
You think in his headshot he includes "Little Rat Boy" as the tagline?
I'm not saying he is a person is like this. I'm saying the character is
the
like
character.
Rat
Yes.
Boy.
Okay. Yes.
Yes. And but it's a guy where it's like the whole time I'm thinking like I'm not sure I know this guy's name, but in every scene he pops up and I'm like, oh yeah, that guy. I remember that guy. He has a look that sticks with you. He's always tall, and like hasn't really been any like conflict between him and Dedra. He's just one of the ISB officers. And suddenly in this episode, you learn he is enormously important.
Yes.
And we learn so much about him and like his personal life and all of these things.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I mean,
well, you see him kind of take this elevator and he goes to this location, the secret location, and you don't even know what. Well, I didn't even like recognize that was the same guy. Like at first, I was like, "Oh, is that the guy from the?"
Well,
thing?
they do the same thing that they did with Clea
yeah.
A while back, where we just follow someone walking through Coruscant for a long time. Also, I gotta say, Lonnie makes a rookie mistake here, which is, as we've learned in Andor, if you want to be sneaky, you wear a big hood.
I don't know why he was not wearing a big hood.
Where's the big hood?
I agree.
But it's a thing that I love seeing here, just because, Coruscant, obviously, the whole planet is a city. So it's a big place. There's also these levels to it. It's like a famous thing in Star Wars lore. It's like almost no one has ever like actually been to like the surface of Coruscant because the city just goes up forever. But I love. We usually see the big fancy like rich person part of Coruscant, and so this part when the show cuts to this elevator on the outside of a building going way down somewhere, and then following him kind of walking through like the sketchy part of Coruscant. I'm not going to say like the red light district of it, but it's like I love seeing these other like neighborhoods and other views of Coruscant. And again, it's reminds me a little bit of like the opening of the first episode on Morlana 1, just like kind of like the Blade Runner-y vibes.
Yeah.
And then I think this is an incredible scene.
It's an incredible scene, and you had remarked like yesterday you thought it was done in one long continuous shot, and I think like most of it is one long continuous shot.
This is what's really interesting about the scene, because he gets into this elevator. He, in a very kind of like Godfather manner, like reaches up on to pull out this little it's
like a Bluetooth headset.
Yeah, an earpiece that's been left for him. That's been secretly stashed there, and he puts it in and types in like a really high, he also puts the elevator to express to go to some like high number. And then the way this scene plays out, it is pretty much the camera is locked on his face in a tight close-up. For
like it's cutting off like the top part of his head.
And the scene it's lit entirely with like harsh, like greenish fluorescent lights. But it's locked on his face for a solid 3 minutes as he has a conversation with Luthen, basically over the phone. But what the scene does is it has a few jump cuts. Which is something that I've never seen. I was
looking for the long continuous shot, but then I remember there being cuts, but they're very subtle, right?
But they are jump cuts. It's basically as if like it's the same take, but they just snipped out like 3 seconds.
YouTube style, basically.
And so it's like it gives it this like weird anxious feeling because they're just like suddenly like chopping, just like because the way jump cuts go, especially when it's like handheld jump cuts in a tight close-up with this like unpleasant harsh lighting, it kind of like throws you off balance a little bit. Also, the elevator is kind of like shaking around. He's like holding like a handle as if he's on a bus or something like that. And there's a few little jump cuts. One of them happens also like when the lights flicker. And I feel like really, really good. Like Toby Haynes is crushing it like every episode. And I think it's a really nice little touch and a bit of visual language that I can't recall ever seeing in Star Wars.
I love this whole scene because I don't know about you, but do you ever feel helpless in an elevator? Like being in an elevator, you sometimes feel like, oh, like anything could happen to me.
David, I had this thought half an hour ago when I rode the elevator up 3 floors to come to this room to record.
It's just like I'm sure there have been scenes where like there's people talking to someone in an elevator like in a threatening way, but like I've never seen one like this where it's like there's this. They're theoretically on the same side. They're working together, but there's this very sinister undercurrent to everything that's going on. He's obviously Luthen opens by talking about Lonnie's daughter, and it's like, okay, you're clearly like
right, because like they haven't been in touch in a year, and in that year he's had a child.
Yeah. So
can I also just say one thing about the scene? Like, again, I don't know how I don't know the behind the scenes stuff, but they must have done it with like him actually talking live to Stellan Skarsgård, who was, I guess, like off camera or whatever. Because,
or someone reading Stellan's lines, but yeah.
Well, my assumption is that like because the timing of this is so crucial and it's basically and most of it is one continuous shot.
Yeah.
I'm like they must have been able to actually act off each other because it's an intense phone call.
Perhaps. Movie magic is capable of a lot of things.
Yeah.
But it's just like, wow, this is a really intense scene because this guy's like basically helping. He's dead to rights. He shouldn't have gotten in the elevator at all, basically. But why would he be afraid? Because they're theoretically working together. Anyway, so here are some things we find out from their phone call. First of all, Lonnie asks Luthen if he was responsible for Aldhani, and Luthen lies to him.
Yep.
So it's like Luthen is setting up.
He's like, they asked if we wanted to be involved, but we said no.
Yeah. I love how Luthen's talking about it like it's a podcast appearance. He's like, he asked if I wanted to guest on Joe Rogan, but I was like, I can't make it that day. Yeah. It's like, that's how they plan Aldhani. So it's like, okay, even though Lonnie's working for him, like Luthen still is like extremely careful. By the way, I think someone wrote in, they either tweeted or commented or pointed out that like, if you go back and rewatch the early episodes and Luthen's like pitching the Aldhani heist to Andor, you realize that Luthen probably would have killed Andor if he'd said no. Like he's like, if you don't want to do it, I'll drop you off somewhere. It's like, drop you off like in a dumpster.
Right. At this point, we have learned that Luthen is so much more ruthless than we initially thought.
Well, and if you weren't sure of that from the subtext, then it's made text by the very long monologue that he gives. But anyway, Lonnie has a daughter, and Lonnie explains to Luthen, hey, Dedra Meero, she's on to you. She's calling you access. She's the person you want to look out for, basically.
Yeah, he's like, there's a new person who's like rising up through the ranks of the ISB.
Yes.
A new hotshot star.
Yes. By the way, we one of the things that people predicted. Let's finish the Luthen scene and then we'll talk about Meero because I want to talk about some of the content. Before we move on. But anyway, so then Luthen basically says, okay, and Lonnie reveals to Luthen that they know about the Spellhouse attack, right? And so Lonnie's like, well, we got to figure out a way to like thwart or stop the Spellhouse attack from happening. And Luthen's like, no, I'm not going to do that because, yes, 50 men will die in the Spellhouse attack, but on the flip side, you'll still be in place. And that's how important you are, as I'm willing to sacrifice 50 men for you, Lonnie. So then Lonnie gets to the top floor. They have a conversation.
Whoa.
Go ahead.
You can't skip over one of the best images of the episode, which is we're still in the elevator as they reach the top floor, and the door opens, and we just see out there on a platform with a space cape, Luthen. Yeah. It's like that is. Like that's a trailer shot right there, because they're basically like talking pretty much on this like elevated walkway out there where it's all dark, and you just got Stellan Skarsgård, his cape blowing in the wind as the doors open to reveal him. That's incredible. It looks so cool.
I agree.
And I love the way this scene is lit, where Luthen has he's out there with a slightly more flattering lighting on him, and he's talking to Lonnie, who just is has this like ugly green lighting on him, and it just basically Luthen looks awesome. Lonnie looks utterly pathetic here, which is great for the scene because Lonnie is basically being like, this, like being a double agent is really difficult, and I'm really scared all the time, and I want to leave, and please don't make me do this anymore. And and Luthen is like, no, you will.
Sorry.
So actually, David, I want your interpretation of this. Now that we've learned more about Lonnie, how do you think Lonnie and Luthen ended up in this relationship. Do you think Lonnie is like sympathetic toward the rebellion?
Yes.
Okay.
I think so. And I think like he seems like a decent person because he's like, I don't want 50 men to die on my behalf, you know?
Right.
So he's clearly has more humanity than Luthen. And probably he probably is like has a similar plot line to like Gorn, you know, where he saw some of the injustices and he's like, I can't put up with this anymore.
Right. But at the same time, he's also like, I want to get out. I want to stop helping you and basically just go back to doing my job, actually working for the Empire.
Yeah.
I don't think he's quite in the Gorn position where he's like, I want to...
No. He was saying like, he's going to try to get out of the game completely. That was my sense. Was like his wife has a shipping business or something like that.
Right.
Yeah. So he's trying to get out. He's like, I have health excuses I can give, and Luthen's like, that's not going to happen.
You need to stay in place.
Interestingly, like, you know, bringing up The Sopranos, there actually is a very similar plotline in The Sopranos of a character who's like trying to get out of the game, and it also doesn't go well for that person. So,
hey, look, we have no idea what happens to Lonnie.
Yeah, he's not mentioned either positively or negatively in the any of the other Star Wars movies we've seen.
I'm just gonna toss out a theory, a prediction that I am sure will not be true. So you know, Andor is gonna be a 2-season show.
Yeah,
and you know, at the end of season 2, it will bring us pretty much right up to the events of Rogue One. I hope the end of the final episode, I hope the series finale of Andor ends with, you know how American Graffiti ends? With just text telling you what happened to each person. Like one guy like dies in Vietnam and stuff like that. I hope it's the same thing, except every Imperial person just says they perished on the Death Star. They died in the Battle of Yavin.
My favorite one of those is from Walk Hard. Minor spoiler for Walk Hard, but he's like, Dewey Cox died 3 minutes after this performance. Like, that's amazing.
Well, one of the best ever. I just think it'd be funny if we just have like freeze frames of every Imperial officer, and they just all died in the exact same way, except for Blevin, who we know died in the Battle of Endor.
Yeah. Well, Patrick, let's take a break for a moment, and
we're not going to talk more about the Luthen scene.
We will, but I want to take a break first. I mean, if you're a character like Lonnie Jung in Andor, the TV show, what Lonnie sounds like he needs is a break. You know,
I think he really needs a break, and also he needs to, after this harsh, stressful conversation with Luthen, he needs to talk to some people who actually like care about him and want to help him out.
He needs and on top of that, perhaps some food and liquid refreshment would do him some good.
Yeah, you know what I'm guessing he does? I bet he gets right back in that elevator, takes it up to like the nice neighborhood on Coruscant, and probably, you know, walks into his local McDonald's.
I agree.
Or the canonical Star Wars equivalent of McDonald's.
Yeah, well, you know, this episode of Decoding TV, it's funny you mention that, because this episode of Decoding TV is brought to you by McDonald's, proudly serving community since 1965.
That's great news.
You know, it's no surprise here that at Decoding TV, we love the idea of community. Over the last decade or so, I have really been grateful to foster communities in all the podcasts that I do, including with Decoding TV, as well as the Filmcast. And Patrick, you know, this is our first regular podcast together, but I think even in the short time that we've been doing it together, you see this community that's already kind of built up around this show, are talking about it. They're adopting the hashtags. They're writing in with their ideas of what should happen in the show.
And I love it because this is like life imitating art, because this is essentially a show about the building of a community, which is the Galactic Rebellion.
Indeed. That's why I'm really excited to partner with McDonald's, with Decoding TV. They truly care about fostering a sense of community. And one of the biggest ways McDonald's fosters a sense of community is through their incredible crew members who work hard to truly make you feel like you're right at home.
Yeah. You know those prison guards on Narkina 5? McDonald's crew members are like the opposite of them.
And indeed, they are really nice, friendly, and they serve you quickly and efficiently. And I always have a great time when I'm picking up food at my local McDonald's down the street from me. And I'm just impressed by the level of service that McDonald's crew members show. So whether you know that one crew member that always remembers that you like your Big Mac with an extra pickle, or the crew member who greets you in the drive-thru with a warm smile, a huge thank you to McDonald's crew members everywhere for making our McDonald's visits even more special. McDonald's.
I'm loving it.
Thank you, Patrick. So, thanks to McDonald's for sponsoring this episode of Decoding TV. Let's talk about the rest of the scene. Luthen gives A monologue to end all monologues. This is clearly a monologue written by the person who created the U.S. version of House of Cards.
I mean, this right here, it's funny because I wouldn't have said this. I would not say the words I'm about to say about anything that's happened in any of the other Star Wars shows. This here is Stellan Skarsgård's Emmy clip. This is, I mean, genuinely, I hope, like, The Mandalorian got all these, like, Emmy nominations and probably won some stuff. If that did, they should absolutely be submitting Andor for everything. But this is Stellan Skarsgård's best supporting actor in a television drama clip. This, can I read a little bit,
please,
of this monologue?
Give us a dramatic performance.
So basically, what Lonnie's saying, he's like, I've sacrificed so much to help with this.
What have you sacrificed?
What have you sacrificed? And Luthen's just like, oh man, too late.
How dare you even ask? Luthen is unchained now.
You. Oh God, dude, you got me started. He's like, I've given up all chance at inner peace. I've made my mind a sunless place. I share my dreams with ghosts. I wake up every day to an equation I wrote 15 years ago to which there's only one conclusion. I'm damned for what I do. And then he just keeps going from there about basically like he's using his enemies' tactics and weapons against them because he has to sink to their level to accomplish his goal. Yeah. He is basically, he's pretty much saying, I know that I am a bad person because of what I am doing, and I will never be happy. I will probably like die miserably with like no one who loves me because I have committed everything like in my life to this one singular goal. Yeah.
It's an interesting view on the rebellion, which is not only that often to succeed, like the thesis that it is putting forth is that not only in order to succeed, must you touch evil, must you do the things that your enemy does, but also that often the people who are most responsible for these things are never known. Like you never know who they actually are. That's one of the things he says. Like no one's ever gonna, I'm fighting for a sunrise that I'm never gonna see. Like no one will ever know what my name is or recognize me. And in fact, I don't know if you're, I don't think the name Luthen has been mentioned in Star Wars previously.
Wouldn't it be funny if the medals that like Luke and Han get at the end of A New Hope are actually like the Luthen Rail Memorial Award? It could be possible.
Yes, maybe that's what it says.
They'll just do an extra special edition of the movies where they'll just have some like AI create new off-camera dialogue for Carrie Fisher to be like, and this is all thanks to a great hero named Luthen who helped start the rebellion. To be very clear, that would be bad. We don't want that to happen. Don't do that. But I mean, this is the thing of like, here's a genuine question. I wonder if George Lucas is watching Andor. I wouldn't be at all surprised if he's totally checked out of all current Star Wars. I know he like visited the set of The Mandalorian and stuff like that, but I'm not expecting he's watching most of this stuff. I genuinely hope he's watching Andor because over the years, Lucas talked a lot about how a lot of his inspirations for Star Wars were, like things like the Vietnam War and kind of thinking of the like everything from like the Ewoks to the rebellions, kind of like the Viet Cong fighting this like giant like empire, this this invading force. But Lucas has always been a more political guy than he often gets credit for, and I feel like Andor is so much in the spirit of what Lucas's interests always were, that I think he would be really excited about a lot of this. Finally, people making Star Wars aren't just interested in like the fun toys and like spaceships he designed like years ago, but are actually interested in like the core ideas that he was trying to get at. And I think George Lucas would be happy. And this kind of scene with Luthen and this kind of perspective on the rebellion, I think he'd like that. Yeah.
I hope so. Who knows what his attitude is at this point, but
look, if George is just chilling out and he's like, I am done with Star Wars forever, don't even mention it to me, I get it completely.
He deserves it. Okay. Well, that is all the non-Narkina 5 stuff. Now, before we move on.
There's the one scene with Dedra.
Yeah. I thought we already went over that, where like they agreed to do the thing. But that's what I was going to talk about next. Is
Right.
One of the biggest weaknesses of this show, this episode, is a startling, alarming lack of hashtag content.
Yeah. Kiro, not a thing here.
Kiro, not a thing in this episode. Dedra shows up for one brief scene where she doesn't, she's shown up by Lonnie. We don't see Cyril at all in this episode, and obviously that's a huge loss. But, one place where you can see Cyril Karn is on Patrick H. Willems' Twitter account, where he has assembled a viral video for hashtag Kiro shippers.
Yep.
I mean, I feel like, people are starting to use hashtag Kiro, and I would say that this podcast has to be one of the, if not the first place that agreed upon hashtag Kiro.
It must be, because I feel like early on when this first came up, we like tossed around some options for names and then settled on like Kiro being like the one, it just sounds the best.
Yes.
And
So you made this fan cam video of the two, basically hoping the two of them get together, and unleashed it upon the world. It is one of the most brilliant videos I've ever seen in my life. I would highly recommend it. I'll link to it in the show notes. If I'm lucky, I'll convince you to let me post it on the Decoding TV YouTube channel.
Absolutely. The thing about this was, look, like a lot of us, I've recently been listening to the new Taylor Swift album a lot.
Yeah.
And at some point I was like riding the subway and I was listening to the final track on the album, Mastermind, and I was realizing, you know what? We've been talking about it, having a lot of fun with the idea of like the two most like loathsome little like ambitious fascists in the galaxy.
Yes.
Like what if they got together from a truly cursed relationship?
Yeah.
And listening to this song, I was like, wait a second. There's some of the lyrics in this song. If they were paired up with visuals, it would work so well.
Yes.
And I had to, and especially, and then after the last episode, when we had the scene outside the ISB offices, I had to do it.
And you've received some interesting support and responses from people. I think you said some people involved in Star Wars have actually shared your video. Is that right?
Yes. Pablo Hidalgo, head of the Lucasfilm Story Group, who works on Andor, was one of the first people to retweet it, and said, I believe he said, I have nothing to apologize for. And so look, there you go. Lucasfilm employees endorse my truly cursed video, and I'm so proud, and I'm really glad that was not a huge waste of like the hour or so it took to put together.
I mean, it wouldn't have been a huge waste anyway, because you would have been putting out, something brilliant into the universe.
David, that means a lot. Thank you.
People like Mozart weren't appreciated in their time. You know what I'm saying? So like, just because people don't love it doesn't mean it's not a great work of staggering genius.
That is true, and that's why right here, right now, I am excited to announce that I am quitting the video essay game forever, and I'm pivoting entirely to fan cams.
Okay.
Based on ships on television shows.
That is where the money's at, and by the money I mean $0.
Yeah, you know how much I made from this one? Nothing.
But I
got some followers, and as we all know, right now at this very moment, new Twitter followers are a really valuable thing.
It's so the stock has gone so high for new Twitter followers and functions, as it were.
So yeah,
anyway,
I think look, this is going to pay out like a slot machine pretty soon, and so I'm just saying, I'm excited.
It will pay out like a slot machine. That's right. On that note, we also got some people emailing and tweeting at us speculating on how Cyril might become more intertwined with the Dedra Miro storyline. One person suggested that, like, remember last episode, there was someone who was like, wait a second, he was clean shaven, and figured out that it was Cassian Andor from that. And then like somebody said, oh, maybe that person's a little too eager, and Dedra's going to stomp that person out and bring Cyril in instead. But one of the suggestions I like the most that I saw on the YouTube channel, youtube.com/decodingtv, is the idea that Cyril is somehow, in trying to get Cassian Andor, going to inadvertently foil whatever Dedra Miro's plan is, which would be delightful. So I don't know if you're placing any bets, Patrick, but I wanted to bring up those possibilities.
I genuinely don't know where this is going to go because again, it's hard to tell exactly based on their scene in the last episode how Dedra is feeling. I mean, she's clearly like initially like horrified and repulsed and like freaked out that Cyril has shown up there.
But there's a glimmer of her appreciating this person's level of passion and emotion for like literally less than 2 seconds. She feels that way, I think.
So I don't know if this is a thing where if she sees him again, she will actually put him in a cage on the Outer Rim. Or look, we also don't know anything about Dedra's personal life. We don't know if this is a situation where
is there a Mr. Miro?
Right. Or is she so sad and lonely that she might go on a date with this one guy who has shown her that there is beauty and justice in the galaxy. I don't know. But also there's a part of me that wouldn't be surprised if Cyril goes and I don't know, buys a blaster himself and decides that he's going to like prove his value by independently tracking down and and catching and maybe killing Cassian Andor.
We will see. Okay, let's talk about the Narkina 5 storyline. So this is the prison break. It begins in this episode moments, like literal seconds after the last episode ended.
Yeah.
So Olaf is dead, and they're kind of wheeling his body out, and
they seem to be taking it through another work floor that the night shift is working on right now.
I really like that scene because everyone's on program, which is they are stood, face forward with their hands on their head, and it just hammered home how dehumanizing this whole thing is. You have a dead person, someone who you're working with moments ago, and everyone's just kind of standing, under duress. Basically, they can't like pay tribute, they can't acknowledge this dead person.
Well, I think the people out there now don't really know Olaf because that's the new shift. But yeah,
you know what I'm saying.
I do. Yeah,
you know what I'm saying. Yeah. So then at that point, Andor and Kino Loy have a brief scene of dialogue where Andor is like, hey, look, we got to go tomorrow. Like, they're going to bring in someone new for Olaf. That's the best opportunity we have to do this.
Right. Because we already saw in the previous episode that they were, when a new guy was coming in, they considered enacting their plan then and there.
Yes. I guess the idea is that like when the lift is lowered, that's when the guards are most weakest in terms of their power.
Yes, and it also seems like then it's easier to climb up because, I mean, we see the whole plan play out. It's a pretty good plan. It's really like, I mean, watching like a prison break work like this, it's kind of similar to the joy of like a heist sequence in a heist movie where it's like they spend all this time planning and you get to see like all the steps to their plan and everything kind of fit together. It's great.
A lot of great quotes in this episode, as with all Andor episodes.
I'm sure you wrote down some. I did too.
Yeah, I'd rather die trying to take them down than die giving them what they want.
Yes,
that's what Cassian Andor says to Kino Loy.
And when Cassian is really like Cassian. There have been episodes where he barely speaks, and he is like giving a speech here to Kino to really convince him like to join them, and he's explaining that like right now, like even though they seem so much more powerful, he's like they are getting freaked out by like the fact that like we might know that they like fried those guys. One of the lines he says, "Power doesn't panic.
Power doesn't panic.
They are panicking right now." And he says like every day we wait, they get stronger, and so they'll probably bring in more guards and all of that. Like they really have to go. Like they've got to go now.
Yeah.
And I think for me the most powerful part of this episode, and I know I was saying some of this, some similar stuff last week, but is just watching Andy Serkis' performance over the course of this episode and watching the journey that Kino goes through and watching him, be hesitant to sign on to the idea of the prison break. And then once they are back in their cells, finally him just making the decision to like because he is the guy who he's like the shift leader. That is his actual title. But him basically like shouting and like commanding everyone there, like, this is going to happen. Like, he's telling them all the exact information that they learned from the doctor about the other floor being all executed. He's telling them that they are never going to get out. And also, you've got to imagine that Kino's probably been here a while.
Yeah.
Like, Cassian's been here, what, like a bit over a month?
Yeah.
And Kino, maybe years.
Yeah.
And I don't want to skip ahead too much, but like, he has a big speech that he gives later on, which I think is like a beautiful piece of acting.
Yeah. But I think the show is also positioning Cassian Andor as, it shows you what he's good at. He is really good at keeping track of like a lot of different details, making a plan, but also what's interesting to me is he's good at motivating others. There's this the scene you described where they finally like take over everything, and he says, Kino, it has to be you. You have to give the speech, because Kino is obviously a really charismatic dude. In most other shows, it would be Cassian giving the speech.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh, he's the guy who's in charge of he's the name of the show. Like, why, but they decided that they would make him motivate someone else to give the speech. And in fact, that's kind of what he does in Rogue One as well, to some degree, right? And I just think that's a really interesting perspective to take on the character, is like, he's not the big charismatic leader. Sometimes he is the person motivating the.
He's the guy behind the scenes, putting all the pieces in place.
Yeah.
He's the producer.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of what the show is trying to highlight. This episode specifically, too, with Luthen's speech, is like there's all these people behind the scenes making the thing happen. So, but yes, the prison break occurs, and there's a lot of amazing moments. Like, one of my favorite ones is when Kino Loy gives that speech right before they're about to start working, and he's like, "Let's make it look good, folks." And then like, they turn off the floor, and then they were able to get on the floor.
Okay, well, can we go through the steps of the plan?
Sure.
Because I love it. So it's similar to, we saw in the last episode, a new guy is coming in to replace Olaf. Cassian goes to the bathroom, knocks out the panel, starts sawing away at this pipe. And the last time I wasn't entirely clear what the plan was of like what is in that pipe, why is he sawing at it, and it all makes perfect sense.
The idea is that there's water in the pipe. The water goes in the ground. When they try to activate the floor, it will like create an electrical charge through the water up through the system and like short out the whole system. Right?
Exactly. Yeah. So they will basically just make it impossible. What they're doing is taking away the biggest weapon the guards have, which is the electrified floor.
Yeah.
And it works out perfectly because Cassian is frantically like prying and sawing at the pipe to get it to break open and start spilling the water out. And then as the new guy is coming in, two of the people at their table break out into a fight. To get the guards to suddenly pretty much get the guards to the point where they're going to like electrify the floor or whatever, and then water pours out onto the floor. Kino shouts for them all to get up on the tables.
We have to say, like, the editing is like exceptional in my opinion. It's like cutting between all these different things that are happening at like a really nice pace and amping up the tension. And when like you see like the water flowing into it, and you're like, what's going on with that? What's going to happen with that? And like every time they cut away to a new thing, you're like, what is going to happen with that thing? Right.
And they've also established the geography of this whole facility really nicely. Like, a bit later on, they enter like the main control room, and they have this great visual, which is just a big like top-down diagram of the entire place with like little dots of yellow to represent each person, and you can see all the people flooding into the center of the Narkina 5 facility. It's really cool.
Yeah, and you see a lot of the other prisoners too. What was cool to me is like my guess is they only built one of those factory floor sets, right? Yeah. So they populated with all these different groups of people to make it seem like, oh wow, there's thousands, there's 5,000 of them there.
Same thing with like the cells or like the bunks and all of these things.
And you see them like breaking out, and it's like really it feels very empowering of them to do that. And but one of my favorite moments is when the water has flowed in, they like flip the switch to try to electrify them, and it doesn't work, and then there's this big pause, and then Kino Loy screams attack, and it's like, oh, it's so bad. It's like freaking Braveheart, man. It's amazing,
and it's great because and then you just see Andy Serkis just charge forward. It's really good stuff. And also a lot of the prisoners also just die in this prison break. Like when they electrify the floor, when it's covered in water, one guy doesn't get on the table in time, and he just dies. He just gets fried to death right there. It's rough. A lot of people, the guards have blasters. And
they're like set to kill. It's like this is not going to like burn you. This is not like set phaser to stun. They kill.
Right.
I will say every time Melshi was on screen, I relaxed a little bit. Yes. I'm like, okay, because we know Melshi's going to make it to Rogue One.
Yes.
But everyone else, I'm like, anyone like Kino Loy might die. And in fact,
I mean, we don't know what happens.
I thought that was very smart. Didn't you think that was? I thought it was smart. I was like, because I think they want to leave open the idea that Kino Loy is still part of this universe. Is my guess.
Potentially, but also just this idea. And sorry to skip to the end of the episode, but this idea that Andor, just like over the past day mostly, has had this like really impactful experience with this one guy. Mm-hmm. He motivated this guy to straight up lead like a little minor rebellion within this prison. And then suddenly, they're running to the edge of the prison where people are jumping into the water. It's the only way to escape. And Kino is saying, I can't swim. And he's hesitant to jump over. And then Cassian just gets knocked by rushing prisoners, falls into the water, and just he can't go back. Yeah. He doesn't see what happens to Kino, and this is the way life goes. Like suddenly, because he just gets tipped over the edge, he might never see him again.
Yeah. I mean, I do think that to some degree we are starting to really feel some of the limits of this 3-episode structure, right? Like, I love the 3-episode structure because you get like amazing writers, directors come in and do this stuff. But then there's some real disadvantages to it. One of them is many of the episodes feel like they just end abruptly, and that's a bummer. But another one is you kind of know that when someone famous like Andy Serkis shows up, they're probably not going to be with us past like this arc. Do you know what I'm saying? Right. There have been exceptions, like Vel still in the show, Vel and Cinta still in the show. Yeah. But like everyone else died in that plotline, right? So like basically
at the same time, when we were watching the heist arc, I wasn't watching it being like, well, like Eben Moss Backrack is such a big star. There's no way he'll be around for. Like, we didn't know. What was going to happen.
I mean, and they could have survived and not been in the show, right? Yeah,
they could have. I mean, it's also. I mean, here's the thing. I think what most shows probably would have done, because that we see too much of this in television, is take any one of these arcs in the season of Andor, any one of these 3-episode arcs, and take like 10 episodes to tell that story. Mm-hmm.
I think that was like close to what their original plan was, if I'm not mistaken, right? Like, I think for season 2 at least.
I think it was a bit more season 2 because season 2 is going to like jump ahead like a year between each arc. Yeah. But I will say this episode feels like it has an ending. Like they escape. They get out, and wherever we jump after this, like I feel fully satisfied with the prison storyline.
Totally.
And I like obviously there is the like real world logistics thing of like, okay, Andy Serkis is like a bigger actor, and maybe they can only get him for 3 episodes. But I just like the bittersweet ending to it, where it's like he might just not see Kino again.
Yeah, it's cool. Like it's a bit. I was thinking like, what are the ways this Kino thing's going to happen? Like end, right? He's going to join them, and they all escape together, or he's going to die, right? I did not foresee he can't swim, stays behind. You don't know what happens to him. I think that's a more interesting choice.
It is. So, I mean, like a million things could have happened. Yeah. He could have jumped in the water and like, maybe even if he can't swim, someone can probably tell him just like move your arms like this, and we can get there. Yeah.
So maybe he'll survive.
Right.
Maybe.
But I feel like the traditional thing to do would be like he and Cassian have like a really like have like an emotional goodbye, and they're like good luck wherever you go, and they run off in different directions. Yeah. This I felt like really fit the just like the messy chaos of everything a lot better. And but I think we should talk about the scene where Kino gives the big speech. He gets on the PA system.
Yeah, there's some cool moments in that speech where so they break into kind of the bridge of this place. Someone's about to like zap everyone, right? Mm-hmm. One of the people's about to zap everyone, and they stop him from doing that. And
they also pretty ruthlessly just blast one of the guys in the control room.
One of my favorite things is when he's like, "Okay, I want you to turn it all off," and the guy in charge is like, that could mean so many things you're talking about. And then they like just murder a dude. And then the other underling is like, okay, I'm going to turn it off for you. Like, I'll turn it off. And then they turn it off, but then there's like backup hydropower that they then need to deal with as well. So, and then Kino gets on the mic and he's like, hey, you need to give everyone a speech and tell them what to do. And he has a difficult time doing it. Now, again, this is a thing where I wish I had a little bit more time with Kino to understand him a little bit more, but it works because anyone will be terrified in this situation, you know. And he's a company man, meaning like he's worked for the on behalf of the Empire, basically, even though he's a prisoner. But yeah, what about this scene and this speech resonates with you so much, Patrick?
I mean, just watching Kino's initial, again, he's been screaming attack a minute ago.
Yeah.
He's the guy who, when we first met him, he is just the guy barking orders on the floor, just telling everyone what to do. He's like the highest ranked prisoner there, whatever.
Yeah.
And just watching just him be kind of scared to like get on, because basically do public speaking and have to talk to a larger group of people, and basically like there's clearly no turning back already from where they are, but this just feels like another big step forward where suddenly there is like more weight on what he has to do and more responsibility than before. And watching him start out like a little nervous, like his voice is cracking a little bit, and then just like with the kind of like off camera, just like encouraging of Andor to be like, you've come on, talk to these people and tell them what to do. Just building to the point where he's giving this big inspiring speech that ends with like everyone shouting "one way out" repeatedly, the title of the episode. And it's stirring stuff. I just thought this was a new view of rebellion, a big thing, one of the major ideas of Star Wars. And I just thought it was really exciting. I love Kino, and I've come to really care about this guy, especially just over the past 2 episodes.
Great speech, really awesome performance by Andy Serkis, and like just a lot of like cool little cutaways. Like as we referred to, you're seeing like all the different people in the different factory floors. There's a great shot of like all the guards like cowering in fear, like with their little prods.
They're like in a storage room or something. As you can see, they're like there's a window on the door and they're crouching below it so no one can see them in there. Really great image.
All right. Well, that's everything with this episode of Andor.
Well, just the very end just ends because we have this, and then it goes to the Luth and Lonnie scene, and then it just comes back to Narkina 5, where Cassian and a couple other people.
It's mostly Melshi. You mostly see Andor and Melshi like running away, trying to stay away from like whatever drones are tracking them. They've reached land.
Yes. And it's nighttime. It looks like you can see like 3 moons in the sky.
Yeah. They're running barefoot, and. Patrick, I have a feeling they're going to make it.
I hope so.
All right.
These crazy kids.
Well, that is going to bring us to the end of this week's episode of Decoding TV. You can find more episodes of this podcast at podcast.decodingtv.com. Email us. Let us know what you think of Andor at decodingtv@gmail.com. And find us on TikTok, Twitter, and YouTube at Decoding TV. Patrick H. Willems, where can people find more of your work on the internet?
More of my work. You can watch the videos I make at youtube.com/Patrick H. Willems, and follow me for now on social media platforms at Patrick H. Willems.
He's Patrick H. Willems. I am David Chen. We'll see you next week. 2 more episodes remain of Andor this season. I'm already missing it, even though it's not over yet. Goodbye, folks. Hey everyone, David Chen here. Thank you so much for watching that video from Decoding TV. If you want to get an audio version of the show, all you got to do is go to podcast.decodingtv.com. And if you want to support what we do, get ad-free episodes of the podcast and also bonus episodes of the podcast, go to decodingtv.com and become a paid member. Of course, you can also like and subscribe for more. We appreciate it. Thanks. See you later.